They're both information science majors, and Luis Ibanez, who is their instructor. And they're going to talk about the web development class and also the database class that Luis has been teaching with Diva Casab, and some of the tools that they use. So please welcome.
Thank you. While the network gets a presentation here, let me start talking a little bit about what we did this semester. Yeah. So this is an experiment on how to use open source tools for teaching some of the classes. So we are teaching two classes with Dima, one in databases and one in web development. And in the process, what we wanted to do, Dima is very excited about the TVA approach, where you have students working with peers. And they are teaching each other as they are learning through the process of, going through the process of following the material. So this is a departure of the model of having the professor teaching everything and the students just sitting there wondering when he's going to stop talking. So in this environment, it's very interesting to follow hands-on activities. So for these two classes, we have been doing a lot of hands-on exercises. And those exercises, of course, we wanted to do them with open source tools. So both for the databases and the web development aspect of it. So what we're going to do is I'm going to tell you how wonderful the class is, and then the students are going to tell you the truth on what actually happened in the class. It's very important to connect. Okay, so we talk about this. So we started last year actually. So we did some experiments with Alex and Diva on introducing some of these tools in the database class. At the time we were doing non-SQL databases. The typical curriculum in databases is that you teach relational, and relational is a religion. And so we were introducing some of the more cooler and newer databases like MongoDB, Neo4j, and widening the spectrum of databases that the students get exposed to, including M, that is a database that I'm very interested in that is used in healthcare. So we did two classes in the fall, and after that experiment, we say, well, we probably should do more of this. So this spring we did, again, two database classes, and one web development class. So actually, Sunash is in the web development class, and Christine is in both of them. What happened there? So we are following the team learning approach. The idea is that you take your class, our class has 25 to 30 students. You create groups that are 5 to 6 students each. And many of the activities are intended to be done in the group. So we plan an activity that the students will work together as a team. And it actually reflects much better what they are going to confront when they get to the job market. You get to a company, you're going to be put in a team, and you have to deal with your team, with the good and the bad things that happen in the team. So things that we did that are a departure of the traditional approach, we use these open source tools, like a Linux server, and we're going to talk in detail a little bit more. And we also mix the classes. One of the things that we realized is that the way we separate classes is artificial, but when you teach students about databases, they should learn also about web development, because most of the applications that use databases will have a web front. And backwards. So if you're learning web development, you should learn about databases. And not just taking a class on databases, but use them as part of what you're doing when you do a web application, because that's the reality in the field. You actually do both things at the same time. So we have the interesting idea of mixing the classes. We brought Alex's class that is in databases and brought it to Dima's class. Where we have, at a given time, about 50 students from two different classes working together in exercises. Now, the tools that we use, the typical open source databases, SQLite, MongoDB, MySQL, Neo4j is a graph database, and M, that is this database that is used in healthcare, very high performance. Now, for the spring, we widened that horizon, and we started by setting up a class server. So one of the challenges that we have in the classroom is that because of organization and security, when you go to the classroom that have computers, you have limited access to what you can do with that computer. You don't get access to those computers. And therefore, there are certain things that you cannot do. So we created a couple of servers in the Amazon cloud. Alex applied for a grant with Amazon, and they grant us 100 hours per student on computers in the cloud. For the combined group of 4 classes, that was 10,000 hours of cloud computing. And has been a very useful resource because we can We have been allowed to experiment without being too worried about the money that we're spending because it's somebody else's money. And then we can actually teach the students. They just left 25 computers running this morning that we have not thought of. In Alex's credit card. No stress. So we have those machines in the cloud. One of the beauties of those machines is that they are disposable. So if something happens, we just throw that machine away and we start another one. So it creates that environment where you can experiment with things without being too worried. We use Git, Bash. We have to introduce the students to the command line. That was one of the challenges in the class. Use SSH to connect from the local machines in the classroom to go to the machine in the cloud. And use editors. That when you think about it, this is one of those stepping stones that is very important to master. You have to know your editor, you have to change words, edit lines, and do it fast and quick. But when you're new to an editor, then that's one of the, we spent 1 or 2 classes just getting to it. Now, because we were really conspiring on how to torture the students, we did all these things at the same time. So we showed them the Git commands, the command line, the Vim editor, pretty much in the same class. And some of them survived, they're still around. We will not do it that way the next time. We're using an Ubuntu Linux machine. Now for the database class, we start this time from the non-SQL perspective. So we start with RDF, that is a more generic database concept. It's all graph. We talk about semantic data, we use Sparkle queries. Then we move into graph databases, MongoDB. So all of these are open source tools, and that makes it easier for us to just install whatever we needed. Look in forums and make the settings that we needed to do. Whatever that we needed to do for the class, we were able to do it as instructors without having to go through the proper channels. Now, in the web development class, we also cover a lot of material. The idea in these classes is not that they are going to become experts in any given technology. The idea is to show them that there is a lot out there. Because the reality is that by the time they graduate, many of these tools may not be around anymore. There will be some other cool new stuff. So really what is more important is for them to learn to learn. So how do we get into the next cool framework for web development? So we cover things like PHP, that is more traditional. We did Node.js, that's one of those hot topics that seems to be a very nice web technology, but we don't know if it will be around 5 years from now. It may be, it may not be. And we work with things like Sencha Touch, that is a mobile device. It was really, really exciting finally to see the students using their cell phones in class for educational purposes. And they actually, I think they like it, but they will tell you the real truth. Now, why do we use open source in the classroom is because, well, it's lower cost, we didn't have to pay much for it. We didn't actually pay anything for it. It's available to anyone, so if any of the students get curious enough about any of these tools, they just can go home and install it again. It's for them to use. And once they graduate, it's still theirs. Because one of the things that tends to happen in higher education is that the students get exposed to software that is proprietary software, but they get for free while they're the students. They get confused and believe that it's free software. And the confusion ends when they graduate, and they discover that for that thing that they were using for free, now they have to pay $5,000 a year for example, a MATLAB library. And then they may realize, well, maybe it wasn't such a good idea to become accustomed to that particular technology. Now we can distribute it, so we could, because it was open source, we were able to set up these machines in the cloud and let them go. So there is no concerns, there is no licensing, we are not going to go to prison for this. For other things, but not for this. All the students have access to the materials, and when we were preparing these things, weeks in advance, as we always prepare class, anytime that you have a question, you just Google for it, and there are hundreds of forums that will tell you, how do you install Python, how do you install PHP? Those kind of questions, you will find so much information that the challenge is actually filtering what to do. So everything is available, information flows very rapidly. Now, the challenges is to plan the activities. So this works really well when you have the time to plan the activity and find that magic increment where it's interesting but not boring. So it's not too hard, not too difficult, and it's very hard to figure that in advance. Now, in many cases, we were actually learning ourselves as we were going through the process. So, for example, Dima knew PHP, but I didn't, and so we were exchanging in many of those topics and building the material as we go. Challenges that we found, the students were not familiar with the command line. that is a real concern for me because the command line is where you really understand how computer works. And because modern operating systems keeps you away from the command line, it gives you these nice, shiny goodies, then people are less and less familiar with how computer actually works. So it's really important, at least for engineering students, to break that barrier and come back to the command line, know how to type, know how to navigate a file system, know what to do to understand the configuration of a computer. All right, so because we were doing PBL, we explored a collection of activities. So individual activities, pair programming, the TBL groups that are 5 to 6 students, and class-wide groups. And what we found is that it doesn't work for everything. So essentially, for some things, you want the students to work alone. You're showing them what is the first 10 commands of navigating the file system. That's something that is better done by yourself with instructions, and you go at your own pace. You don't want the instructor to be reading that from a lecture in a PowerPoint slide. Now, for some activities, when you start writing code together, the pair works very well. Pair programming is known to be a very good technique for debugging. And you have somebody typing and somebody thinking, and that's the combination. Groups work very well when you have to make decisions together. It is not very good if you're going to debug a program. You don't want 6 people trying to debug a program at the same time. But if you need to discuss a topic and arrive to a certain conclusion, then it's an interesting conversation that will happen. So the learning lesson for us is that for some activities fit very well in one of the scales and not in the others. And it's a bad idea to try to fit everything into a TBLSD, for example, or everything into individual. And you have to learn what goes well with what combination. We talked about this a little bit, so we try to avoid having lectures, so we only did mini lectures that were maybe 10, 20 minutes sometimes. And then let the students actually go through the material. The overshooting of activities is something that we tend to do. So when you're running the activity for the first time, one of the things that terrorize an instructor is to run out of material. So we have a class that is 3 hours, and we panic when we think that we only have material for 1 hour. And to make sure that it doesn't happen, then we put material for 6 hours. And then we try to go through it, which it's not always a good idea. So getting that sense of how much is enough to go at a decent pace to the material, actually understanding it without having to run and without letting the students escape early from class. And now you can say what actually happened.
What actually happened? Hi, for this presentation we actually prepared 2 separate surveys, one for 202, which is the database class, and the other one is 362, which is the web development class. And we asked students to put their honest opinions anonymously on there, and we got a lot of opinions. And this picture shows how we were at the beginning of the semester. Everybody was trying to find the NEP. And Kristen is going to further explain what happened at the beginning of this class.
So with the survey, we asked who took programming classes and who didn't. So we found that there were students who did not have any knowledge or background experience in programming. So because of that, using the open source tools and actually learning it was a bit difficult because, for example, Python is like programming. However, there were students who did have experience in programming, and they themselves also found learning the tools to be difficult as well. For the class, we did a lot of tools a lot at once. Every week or every other week, we learned a new tool. So because of that, a lot of students felt rushed learning it. They didn't get an in-depth, understanding of the tool, why we use it, and how we use it.
The survey actually said that there were too many tools introduced in order to effectively learn one, so they felt rushed throughout the whole time, first part of the semester. They also said that they had even the ones who had experience with programming didn't think they grasped too well of whatever was happening in the course. So that was another thing that was bothering them a lot.
In the beginning of the classes, we used a program called Git. Git was really, really hard. Normally, Git is a way to collaborate on programming assignments. So normally, when we collaborate with each other, we meet up, go to the library, send each other files and whatnot. With Git, we were able to work on like a programming assignment together online, and we can actually see each other make changes. However, the way the site is set up for like all of us, we thought it was really hard. We didn't understand how to use the site at all. So that was a big challenge too.
From what we understood of the survey, students thought that they were starting this class off with a beginner level experience, and they went to like PhD course. So it was a total mess for the kids, students. Really good. That was the beginning.
So some of the aspects that we were pursuing on why to use open source. So we were looking for this situation. So have the freedom of do whatever we need to do for the class. So if we needed to change code in the programs that we were doing, we would be able to do that. We were able to change configurations. We have good access in the machines that we were using. It gives us also autonomy when we're planning the class. So we did a lot of sessions with Dima and Alex on Google Hangouts, looking together to activities, figuring out what to do, and changing our mind as we go. Weeks in advance, because we always plan the class very well. And so we have choices. That was one of the great advantages. We were able to say, well, let's try to do PHP, but if it doesn't work, then we can throw it away and grab something else. And you have to go through a lot of bureaucracy to do it. And the forums were very useful in that effort, because every time that we got stuck in installing something or trying to run an activity, we were able to find that information on that.
So from our perspective, using open source tools was also a good thing. However, it was challenging. One of the good things about it was free. A student commented in the survey that they didn't have to buy expensive textbooks, like if you don't want to buy a $100 textbook. So it was cool to be able to download these software tools online and also get information, which you can just Google. You know, if you have any questions, there are a lot of forums online to help us learn the tools.
A couple of students also mentioned that the internship that they have for this semester is currently using the stuff that we're learning in class, so that did benefit them. It's not like we're learning something that we're never going to use. So it's currently, companies are using it, and we will benefit from it. And students at this point do realize that it is beneficial for our wallets, for our insurance, everything.
Skip this one.
All right, so based on the experience in this class and also in the survey, a lot of students had opinions and like a lot of feedback on how we should run the course in the future, or just suggestions. One of the things they felt that we needed was to have separate classes. Learning all of these tools in one class was overwhelming. We felt that, you know, you learned it in 1 week, but you didn't actually feel like you actually learned it and programming on your own. It was just like a brief introduction of the course, of the tool.
The 362 course that we have is 3 hour long, and for programmers like ourselves, I think looking at code or learning code for 3 consecutive hours is just very tiresome. You kind of get like brainwashed, code brainwashed kind of thing. So it was suggested in the surveys that we have separate courses, or some people also thought that they wanted to learn these tools in depth. So this course should be divided into more separate courses so they can learn a particular topic more in depth. So that was another thing.
And these are just the links to the survey that we put together.
We thank everyone who actually took the survey. We understand that this is like finals time, that everybody is trying to do their stuff, get homework and stuff done, and we really thank all of you guys who did submit stuff.
So, thank you. Do you have questions?
Yeah, we have time for questions.
Do you think this course is essential to someone pursuing career in IT or anything like that sort?
It can be, actually, because companies don't want to spend money on software, as I've learned in class, I guess. Companies don't want to spend money on software because software comes with licensing, distribution, and all of that. So open source is like the key to that. So yeah, maybe not right away you'll find a job that will put you into open source software, but later on you will find something.
I would like to add to the answer. Our company is doing business with open source and commercial products, and there is a difference. If you can study, you can be prepared how to work with the community. I think that's the new tendency how software companies are doing. So if you get trained on this type of classes, how you can work with other skills, how you can build software. Open source is going to be the business of the future because it's a big shift between proprietary software and the way we develop software. So as an example in healthcare, if they want to deploy a commercial product, they deploy like maybe $20 million in testing license to start. If they decide to go with open source, that amount of money is not needed. They can spend that money on equipment or paying developers to develop stuff that they can release in open source. So as a student, it's a good for you to be aware of that.
This class run a computer lab?
Yes.
And
Oh,
what operating system runs on computers?
So we have, thank you very much, that's a very good question. We actually have, both of the classes were in a computer lab. One was with Macintosh machines and the other one was using Windows machines. And that was added to the fun. One of the challenges in the computer lab actually is that the monitors are so big and huge that I couldn't see the students. So I have to trust that they were working most of the time. You have to go around. So for certain activities, the room was great. Like the individual activities, I think that was very nice because they have there were new machines in the Mac room. But it was it wasn't conducive to group work. It was very hard for the students, I think, to just talk to the other 5 students in the same group. In the web development class, we have a better classroom because you have the computers along the side of the room, and there are tables in the middle. So for the group activities, they were able to work together in a normal table and then go back to the computers. So that was a little bit more confusing. So thank you for the questions. Do you want to add to that? What do you think about that? Actually, Christine, you were in both classrooms.
The last class that you described, I thought that was better because you can actually go into a group and then 362 and then go back on your own to work on the project as well. And the other class, we're all like, switch and they're all in one spot. So
It's a very compact group.
yeah.
We have time for one more question. Okay.
So how are you going to change the course
That's a
That's a good
very good question. Yes. Really? Yeah. That's actually yeah. Well, let me just answer. So one of the things we learned is that we should have smaller modules that are more focused. Like instead of introducing the students at the same time, oh, there you go, more focused. So one of the horrible things we did to the students was to, in the first class, introduce them to Git, the command line, and Vim at the same time. And each one of those things should have been maybe 2 or 3 classes by themselves, just learning that little piece. So we think that we should modularize the course more, and actually have modules that can be reused in other classes. Because what we found is that, for example, learning the command line has nothing to do with the database class, has nothing to do directly with the web development class, but it's a necessary skill for them to just do their work. So that should be separated in individual modules that can be reused in other classes. So that's one of the things. Another thing that Alex and Dima are very interested on is in the gamification process. How we identify the smaller chunks that keep the students engaged in an interesting activity. So I guess those will be probably the more interesting, the incremental challenges. Now, better design activities unfortunately means that somebody has to spend a lot more time going through the activities, experimenting with it, running it with one class. One benefit we had is that in many of the activities we did them in both classes. So we torture one group of students, and then the others have an easier time. So that helps a lot.
I'm going to push back against you on the idea of more focus, simply because in the real world in IT, IT, there is no focus. IT does everything, it's all due yesterday, and you have to learn at least 6 new technologies every other week or so. That's reality.
Fair enough, yes.
So, I mean, showing that to you guys, while I understand, yes, the first week you use Git, you want to go shove your head in the toilet. Because it doesn't make any sense for about 2 weeks. But on the other hand, that's the reality of IT. So, I mean,
So that was actually a challenge in the class because sometimes we realized that we were squeezing too much and we didn't know if we should continue the pain until they were good or we should stop the pain. So I think sort of in response to that,